Well, it'll happen when the economy comes totally unglued. And then it won't be because there'll be exposure. It'll be because somebody walked up and blew their brains out. And that's what's going to happen. And if these people in government and in Wall Street think they're going to get away with it, there's a lot of people who are going to go crazy because they can't eat, because of what Goldman Sachs and J.P. Morgan Chase and Citigroup and that whole group of the Illuminati have done to the United States in deliberately bringing it to the edge of economic and financial ruin. And
I don't
look, they don't stand a chance. They think they're going to get away with it. They're not.
I don't see us getting out of this year without food riots. It's so on the precipice that just observation and just walking around, if you don't read a thing, just the tension and the obviousness of the corruption is palpable just by walking around and just interacting with the public that may not be aware. But, like dogs sensing something's wrong, you can feel it.
People don't care.
They try to tighten themselves in their lives and occupy themselves with their, they don't see any more than a week into the future. It involves their kids and their jobs and their distractions and so forth. But at what point is that veil pierced? Is it this year, where you talk about the food shortages and so forth?
Could be. But I think it'll take a little bit longer than that. They need more people, financially on their butts. And that could take a year and a half or two. But it's coming. You just be patient.
John.
And you're not going to be able to solve anything politically or through the court system or anything else. Those days are over.
John, we're in uncharted territory here. There is almost no parallels to 1929 and the Depression of the 30s. Okay, this is unprecedented territory. So what you're asking here is to get out the crystal ball. We can make projections. We can watch and, give our best guess here. But we've never seen anything like this. 1929, we weren't that far in debt. There was no people out there in the real world in 1929 and going into the 30s didn't have this personal debt that they have now.
Right.
We didn't have we didn't have the same conditions as in Depression. Right now, we are in uncharted territory. Lying about the figures. We talked about the unemployment figures. It was 4 years into the Great Depression until we saw it hitting its peak of what, guys? 30%, maybe a little over 30%. We're at 20% right now, and we're only a couple of years into this thing.
The in-your-face vaudevillian. Turn on CNBC, and we all know it. It's just the vaudevillian, horrific comedy of it all is plain for any thinking person to see through, and it's just the larceny on a daily basis that they sit and lie about that a 2-year-old could figure out, and nobody does anything. It's like everyone's conscience is just...
John, let me say this. It's the deer in the headlights syndrome, okay? I have a hard time wrapping my mind around this, and I've been inside, outside, popped inside out, looking at this thing from all angles I can possibly even consider. What they're going through right now is nothing more than a psychological shock that they weren't prepared for. They can't make any sense out of anything. They're being told one thing by the great abomination. They're being told other things by the bankster gangster here. They see that things are getting worse, but they don't quite know how to view it. As I said, we're in unprecedented territory. We're waiting for the other shoe to drop. I have a hard time getting my mind wrapped around this. So ergo, the dumbed-down masses out there that are watching MSNBC or CNN or watching these financial shows that tell them absolutely nothing that even resembles the truth, what are they to think? They can't think because there's nothing to think about.
We're paralyzed by political correctness.
And that to boot. They're hoping right now that somebody will tell them which way they're going to turn because they don't know where to turn.
It seems fairly easy for me to see it. Just their value systems must be screwed up.
But, John, think of your perspective. What have you been listening to? What have you been seeing? What have you been reading? What have you been listening to? 98% of the American people don't enjoy what we're talking about right now. and that's information. It ain't good, but at least it's the truth.
I'm a man in the desert looking for water when it comes to the truth, because it's the only thing that makes sense, and without it, we're all doomed anyway.
Well, and we have structures that we have put our faith in. We have turned the candy store over to the mid-managers that raped us in the middle of the night, cooked the books, stole the stuff, and locked you out of your own building. And by the way, here's the notice from the bank. You're in foreclosure. John, I thank you for your call.
Thanks.
Your points are well taken. Rick in Ohio. Hello, Rick.
That's why we all terrorists now.
Well, and you know what? I want to get into this. Let's roll some more calls. I don't want to leave these fine people holding too long.
Am I on the air?
You're on the air, John.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Rick.
Yeah, Rick. Hey, the last caller, what he was talking about there, this is, I think, illustrates one of the, I like the way he put it, the wallpaper looks good.
Yeah.
This illustrates one of the reasons why I think it's important, though, for people to get out on activities like the In the Fed rally, which is coming up this Saturday, inthefed.us, and meet people in your local area who are concerned about what's going on. It's good to know who your friends are in your localities. You can't influence the masses that have got their nose stuck in front of the boob tube. They're going to have to learn the hard way. That's just the way it is.
Well, and they are. But again, let me go back to this, Rick. People don't even know which way to turn because they're not getting the information. And these rallies that we're having, End the Fed, the Tea Party stuff, that's all fine and dandy. These are the core people that understand that things are going horribly wrong. It's being ignored by the mainstream media. They don't want to cover it because they'd have to talk about it and then have to tell further lies or try to spin something that's unspinnable. You saw what they did with the Tea Parties. I mean, the best that they could do was come out and say, well, this isn't a grassroots thing. This is being funded by corporations. What? I mean, come on. That's the best that they could do with this. That's the best lie they could tell. So they're going to ignore all this stuff.
It's hard for them to counter demonstrations in the streets when people start turning out in numbers. And we've got the momentum started now. We've got to keep it going.
All right. And End the Fed thing is when?
This Saturday, the 25th.
All right.
Oh, before I go,
Hold on 1 second. We got to take the break. The music is up and it's loud. 800-313-9443. We'll be right back. All right, Rick, Rick in Ohio, are you still there?
Yeah, I just wondered if Bob Chapman could cover for just briefly the connection between the international banksters, the IMF, and the Fed, and show how they're all intertwined there.
Well, they are, and
thank you, Rick.
They have been for centuries. And, of course, the Fed wasn't started until 1913, but it's the same group of people. And even before the Fed in the United States, they were in control. The control probably came into being the way it is today after the Civil War. Civil War was disastrous for the United States and allowed them to assume great power, which they solidified under the Fed. But they're all connected internationally. And, you see this at the Bilderberger Group meetings and the World Economic Forum and the G7, G8, and G20. And they're in contact with each other all the time. They have people working in foundations throughout the world. They have their own staffs. They manipulate markets 24 hours a day. There's no end to what they do.
And they're all in Washington, D.C. this week.
By the way, I wanted to cover this, what Alan Keyes said recently. And does this sound familiar? When he was running for president in 2000, during the debates, he was the clear winner during those debates, kind of like Ron Paul in this last cycle. He says it's obvious they will stop at nothing. And he's saying that his most dire warning yet, he's saying that the Obama administration is preparing a series of staged terrorist attacks, declaring martial law, and canceling the 2012 elections. And he says it's obvious they're not going to stop at anything. He said, we may wake up one day and there's a series of terrorist attacks, the economy is paralyzed, martial law will be declared everywhere in the United States, and it won't end until the crisis ends itself. Now, he says the minute they think they can get away with it, they will end this system of government, and that is their intention. Noting that everyone acting as if time It's just business as usual. They're marking time like, hey, it's just normal stuff. Now, he says it's clear now that we have put a faction in place. They're not playing by the rules, and they don't intend to play by the rules. If they were playing by the rules, they wouldn't have tried to identify their opposition as criminals. And what he's talking about here, he's making reference to the recent controversy around the release of the MAIC and Homeland Security reports, in which it's more than implied that Americans who exercise and are knowledgeable about their constitutional rights are a threat to law enforcement and potential domestic terrorists. Now here's a black guy. He ain't half black. He ain't half white. If this country wanted a black man in the White House, why didn't they put keys in there? Whoops. Oh, I'm sorry. The guy's an adherent to the Constitution.